everybody, Jerome Maldonado. I come from a development today, and I want to talk to you guys about how construction is changing. I think it's no information to you guys that things have changed in 2020 moving into 2021 because of the pandemic. And how have they changed in relation to real estate development, construction, and finished products from residential to commercial? And one of the big examples that's trending strong right now is the big Santa Clara building that's ready for tenants with all of the COVID bells and whistles. And this is where the movement's going. It's not only the Santa Clara building itself that's getting a ton of traction, it's the building and energy codes and all of the new requirements that developers are starting to be pressed to include in what they're building, from homes to buildings and everything. Energy codes are a huge thing right now in politics nationwide. So the way that we're building to fulfill those energy codes have been talked about for the last decade. And slowly over the last 10 years, we've been pressed into different municipalities implementing those. And so 2020 was the first year that those codes started getting pressed for full implementation in a lot of municipalities because of the pandemic. It perlayed them into 2021. And so now we're starting to see all these energy and tax credits come into fruition. And the builders and developers are starting to be pressed into implementing these, and more will come. So where for single family homes, you might be required now to have like 6 energy credits in the next year, 2 years. We're gonna start seeing implementation of 8 energy credits and possibly more nationwide. And so if you're building, if you're developing, and you're not aware of the tax credits needed for new development, new home construction, or commercial construction, it's definitely something to educate yourself about so that you understand the expenses are required to be able to implement those energy credits to make your properties, your projects worthy of the new energy codes and worthy of the new pricing. With these increases, obviously comes increased prices. I still remember when I was buying a ton of Subway stores, and they were talking about raising minimum wage. And everybody nationwide was panicking. And it just so happened that it was at the exact same time that our stores were just killing it. I had bought broken down stores and was building new stores, where new stores typically do about $4,000 a week in revenue. And it takes 6 months to stabilize. We were opening them new and going to $9,000 plus a week in revenue in less than 60 days. And we were taking broken down stores that were doing $4,000 or $5,000 a week in revenue and taking them to $9,000, $10,000 a week in revenue in 60 days. And Fred DeLuca came down and he said, Jerome, what are you doing? Fred DeLuca, for those of you guys who don't know, he's the founder of Subway. He's since passed away. So our blessings, condolences to his family. But he told me, Jerome, what are you doing to make these stores thrive so much? And so I told him, I kind of went through the exercises of what I was doing to implement, and I was implementing in regards to customer service, food quality, employees, the whole 9 yards. And I remember asking him, I said, hey, Fred, we got a bunch of people ranting and raving right now about this minimum wage stuff and how it's going to affect our economy. And so, and our businesses with everything that we're doing with labor and our costs and our fixed costs. And he said, Jerome, don't worry about that. And I go, what do you mean? I go, it's part of our full expenses. And you know, the stores run on such minimal margin for so many franchisees. What are we gonna do to take care of the franchisees? And he said, Jerome, when I got started and opened up the Subway stores, minimum wage was under $1 an hour. He goes, things have evolved since then. And I've never been put out of business. We've never had to shut down stores. He said, we raised prices and we changed our business model to accommodate the new trends, the new transitions to the market and the appreciation of labor and everything else. So the reason I bring that up is because that's exactly what we landed up doing in Subway. Did we get rid of the $5 footlongs? Well, no. We still kept that promo, but we were able to shift and be able to raise small margins in other areas to accommodate the rising costs of labor, which is also happening right now as well. So are builders going to be forced to fork out the cost of all of these energy bills and fulfilling all these energy bills and these energy credits, are they going to be forced to fork out the cost of building COVID-friendly facilities? No. The end user, the merchants, the buyers, they'll be forced to be able to pay a premium on this stuff. And it just happens with inflation. It's happened forever. It's going to continue to happen. And so just being aware that it's happening is one of the most important things. In fact, this week, our concrete finishers, we went in and they were making all of our infilled day labor. They weren't day labor. Our contract labor finishers, we would pay them about $200 a day. Well, a year and a half ago, we were paying them $150 a day. Now, with everything that happened with the pandemic and the rising costs of living, we're paying them $250 a day. And so we went across the board, all our veteran staff, and we gave everybody raises this last month. Why were we able to do that? Because there's been hyperinflation in the market. And what's been great when there's hyperinflation in the market is we're able to increase prices to the end consumer. So that's what we did. So if you're watching this, you're one of the end consumers, and you're sitting back going, it's not fair. No, life's evolving. Things are going up in value. We're sitting right now at a point in time where where we're experiencing masses of a mass increase of inflation and mass inflation. And so what's going to happen is labor also goes up with lumber costs, concrete costs, building costs, roofing costs. Inflation happens all around us, from our fossil fuels, gasoline, the end price of homes, construction, furniture, all the trim out items like curtains and automobiles. Everything goes up in cost, including labor. And so we went along the board and we handed out raises to almost our entire staff in the last couple weeks, and rightfully so. They need it because there's rising costs economically everywhere else. So let's talk about the Santa Clara building real quick. I didn't want to get too far off track, and I have a tendency to move off on tangents sometimes, which is human nature. But this property is 175,000 square feet, and here's a perfect example. They wanted to make this building COVID friendly, and so it's in Santa Clara, California, prime area. And so we got the, let's see, who's the brokers on this? I think, was it CBRE? No, let's see, Cushman and Wakefield is the commercial brokers on this. And so they go on to explain all the benefits and perks and whistles on the property. I'm just going to mention a few just to give you guys an idea of what they're doing. Obviously, ventilation, heating and cooling is a big deal, right? That's one of the main things is ventilation, but it's also creating a better workspace for people, for inflow and exflow of traffic, for egress, ingress of traffic, people, pedestrian traffic. Directional lighting to help traffic flow in the stairwells. Doors that can hold open for a given amount of time so people don't have to pull on the door handles and exchange germs, right? Bathrooms crafted to provide more privacy, bigger spaces, bathrooms with single path of travel, on-site dog runs to help canines adjust to the return to work after months of being home with their owners, which is crazy to think. But imagine you take a dog. And I'm a dog person. I don't know how many of you guys are dog people. I love it. I love dogs. And I wasn't one when I was younger because I never had them growing up. We did have them, but for a short time. But my wife loves animals. And so much so, she says, I think I love animals more than I love people, because animals are just so loving and forgiving, right? And people have been around their animals this whole time that they've been home with the pandemic, and so they're saying, okay, what's going to happen to these dogs once people go back to work? So they're creating a work-live environment at work where you could bring your canines, and they have walk paths, and they're accommodating that live-work environment in the corporate atmosphere, which is super cool. Outdoor access features from the office, large balconies that offer extensive outdoor amenities. Best practice heating and cooling, air conditioning, ventilation, like we talked about, and they're getting credit-worthy tenants. Is what they're saying. They're getting people to fill the buildings. Clients, they're ready for build-outs, and they're putting companies in a corporate structure in here. And large companies are wanting this type of stuff. And even on a smaller scale, there's small mom and pop shops that are wanting those amenities as well. And what's cool for landlords, for tenants, for investors, is you still charge the square footage prices that you were currently charging and more. So if you have an older property and you're able to accommodate it and people are looking for larger square footages, you're able to lease bigger properties and get more cash flow. If you have new properties and you're developing, you're able to get Class A rents from tenants, from national tenants, credit-worthy tenants, to stabilize your properties, which is also really cool. And so one of the big things is acclimating to the changes as they happen in life. And living in an ever-changing world, implementing this stuff is super important. It's going to happen forever. I started out in the early 1990s in business, and the changes from the way we talk to staff, the way we train staff, the way we manage staff, the way we facilitate business has changed immensely over the last 25 plus years that we've been in business. And it's going to continue to change and continue to evolve. And I remember at a time when I first got started, my dad used to tell me, he'd say, Jerome, he said, why so diversified? Don't you feel like you're spreading yourself a little too thin and you're not going to be able to focus on one thing? Why not just focus on one thing, Jerome? And then as things evolved and hard times happened, like the financial crisis of 2008, when that came about, he said, you know, Jerome, it's a good thing that you're diversified. Because imagine if you wouldn't have been diversified in a time like this. And I sat back and scratched my head and said, you know, you're talking a little bit different a decade ago, but the thing that stabilized our businesses is our ability to not only diversify, but pivot and change. We've been faced with a lot of changes. We were faced with 9/11, which did change the economic world, whether people want to believe it or not, the way we traveled and did business, the time it took to travel and do business in 2001, 2002, and beyond. The insurance policies changed to be able to have terrorist acts inside of them. So we had increased premiums, or we could get rid of the terrorist act premiums. And so there's been changes, right? When we got to 2000, we saw an influx and a height of the market where things were super stimulated from 2004 all the way to 2008. And then 2007, we knew that there was a recession coming, but it wasn't really prevalent until 2000, from 2007 to 2008. And then we lived that for 5 years. It took us to clean that up. Major pivots, major changes. Here we sit during a pandemic year, just prior to a pandemic year, and it moved through the pandemic, and now we're post-pandemic, and we're actually still living the pandemic. We're not even post-pandemic as of right now. We're still living it. But we're now post-pandemic in a fashion where we're aware of it, we're living through it, and we're learning how to continue living beyond it. And so it's going to be super important for everybody watching this video and everybody out there to understand how to pivot and change. And these are just some of the minor changes that are happening right now. Large developers are already implementing it, and it's going to roll downhill even to small developers and redevelopers. So why do I sit here and talk to you guys about this? Because 99% of you guys who follow our content, watching our videos, are interested in developing either residential or commercial real estate. And it's important to understand that you don't have to fork out these costs, maybe initially, but the responsibility is that of the end user. It's just your responsibility to implement the changes and charge accordingly to continue running your businesses successfully and staying up on current building trends, renovation trends, so you can feed and fuel the market for your success and the success of your business long term. Don't forget, if you like this content, you want to see content, more content just like this, pound that thumbs up button, subscribe and hit that bell down below, and we'll bring you more content just like this.